Hey, Aaron, the Trump administration this week launching a new tool where they say people can go and report alleged violations. Meantime, a new lawsuit aims to block enforcement. This End DEI portal, now live on the Department of Education's website, urging students, parents, and teachers to report, quote, illegal discriminatory practices at institutions of learning. The Trump administration says they'll use it to identify potential areas for investigation, following Friday's deadline for schools to get rid of diversity, equity, and inclusion programs or risk losing federal funding.
Do I support eliminating DEI in education? Absolutely. I think it's unconstitutional.
In a Dear Colleagues letter, the administration accuses schools and colleges of, quote, routinely using race as a factor in admissions, financial aid, hiring, training, and other institutional programming.
The whole memo is anchored in a misunderstanding of the principle of diversity, equity, and inclusion and affirmative action.
But the president's pick for education secretary defending the directive.
There are DEI programs that say that black students need separate graduation ceremonies or Hispanics need separate ceremonies. We are not achieving what we wanted to achieve with inclusion.
The letter also criticizes lessons on systemic and structural racism. In a lawsuit filed by the American Federation of Teachers, the union raises concerns about what they describe as a chilling effect on history classes and free speech violations.
This letter is saying we can't teach honest history, we can't teach critical thinking, and we can't accept our kids for who they are.
The Department of Education did not respond to repeated attempts to clarify what is and is not included under the president's anti-DEI push.
I think the vagueness is the point. The trying to scare people is the point.
In a statement, more than 60 higher education groups argue that the memo is causing widespread confusion. They urge the Trump administration to rescind the guidance and to work with stakeholders to come up with what they describe as legally sound and clearly articulated policies. Meantime, some schools say they've already started to make changes in order to comply, Aaron.
Yeah, Jackie, before you go, the Trump administration has said those who don't comply are at risk of losing federal funding. What could that process really look like?
Yeah, and this is a process that often takes years and sometimes never comes to fruition. So that's in part because the Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights that does these investigations has hundreds of employees overseeing thousands of school districts and colleges. Now, if a school does refuse to comply, the department can seek enforcement through an administrative process, or they could even refer it to the Justice Department for prosecution. But again, even if it goes to court, often federal funding is never revoked because the mere risk of legal action, of pulling funding, is often enough to prompt policy changes. And in fact, this is a tactic that we're seeing the Trump administration deploy in a number of respects when it comes to education policy, including his order that aims to ban transgender athletes from women's sports. Back to you, Aaron.
Appreciate it, Jackie. Thank you so much. A federal judge has temporarily paused key enforcement provisions of two Trump administration executive orders that sought to eliminate DEA initiatives. That ongoing legal battle does not appear to directly impact those guidelines to schools. That's according to the American Council on Education. Onto the roadways. We have a traffic alert for drivers. Specifically this morning there's another Fix 50 weekend closure for drivers to deal with that has already started. The connector from westbound 50 to northbound Business 80 is closed. Drivers will need to take the 26th Street off-ramp and work back to 16th Street on-ramp to eastbound 80 in order to get onto Biz 80. Crews will be replacing the concrete on the connector bridge there. It should be back open and running by Monday morning's commute at 5 in the morning.